Well, I'm very sorry that I can't be heard. I hope you hear me a little bit. As you know, this is a work meeting of the Community Relations Committee. This is a city committee that is subject to open meeting rules. For a work meeting, this is a time when we don't have public speak, but we do have the chance then to work on some of the issues that is before us. The public is certainly welcome to come and listen, but we don't have public speak today. I think that my computer isn't going to let me look at the agenda right now. So the first item would have been attendance, and the second one might have been correspondence, but that's off the top of my head. I'd also like to welcome, Jan Norman's a longstanding member, but it's nice to see you again. And we have a new member, Kathy Gray. Thank you for joining. So for those of you who have an agenda there, am I correct with regard to the next item?
We had new business first. Review CRC establishment under city ordinance. Did you hear me?
Okay. I hear you some. I assume that other members hear Margaret fine, and it's just somehow my connection is pretty bad. Is that correct? You're all hearing Margaret. Okay.
Yeah. So the first thing is the call to order, which you've done, and thank you for explaining the rules for tonight's meeting. Which, if it was hard for people to hear, which was that. Tonight is a working meeting, which means we do not have public speak, but everybody's welcome to, the public is welcome to be here and observe our meeting. And then the next thing is new business. And it's a review of CRC establishment under city ordinance. Chapter 2, Article 3, Division 11, Section 2-75. See attached, but it's not attached because it didn't get attached by the city clerk. So does somebody want to start a conversation about that?
Patty, before that happens, can I just ask, did you all take attendance already?
We
Yes.
did, and I said you were there.
Oh, okay, thank you. I just wasn't sure. Okay, thank you.
The other thing is that I did get the attachment was attached to what I got. In any case, so I have it in front of me. Do other people have the CRC Community Relations Committee establishment?
I have it, but I got it from a past source, not from the email.
Okay. I'm not exactly clear what we were going to go review it, and I think it gives us some of our duties and responsibilities, which I believe we're not really that clear about at this point.
So, yeah, I think this came up because there was some committee members wanted to review what our roles and responsibilities were. I personally think that we have identified some things that we want to do, and one of the things we were told was that we can, we want to make this committee our own, and so personally, I think our time is better spent talking about creating the two items we've identified, which are a public hosting or sponsoring a public forum on bias, and continuing to grow our identity, be able to do outreach around our committee, and that is, includes sort of the outreach and marketing concern around making sure people know we're out here and that we're accessible. And that means, getting an identity out into the community. And I think our third is continuing to have a dialogue with folks from A Knee Is Not Enough to see how we can help facilitate, what their, anything we can do in the community with them, or or continue to just be a sounding board in that regard. So if people want to review again, which we've done a couple times, what are roles and responsibilities, I'm more than open to it. But I do think that we have a number of things we could be talking about, but that's just me. So if somebody wants to facilitate reviewing the establishment of the committee, that would be fine.
All right, Kathy, I'm sorry. Why don't you start?
Would you like me to facilitate a little bit?
Well, I was going to say that certainly if you want to facilitate that, but one of the things is that our duties and responsibilities are very, very broad, very undefined, and rather gigantic. So, I think what we really are in the process of doing is narrowing down. Just as Patty said, we have some particular immediate things we've thought about promoting or moving forward, but I think that what we are in need of is really simplifying our role and what we do and what it is that we're going to do best versus we do everything and none of it well. So that's where I'm coming from in terms of, so we can go through these things, which are enormously elaborate. I could read each one of the 8 points, but I do think it's not a useful use of our time. It's an enormous list of things that we are to do.
I guess I feel like we already kind of have gone through this a lot too when we created our mission statement and our key goals. Like we had those meetings where we hammered it all out to simplify and summarize exactly what our mission is. And I guess I feel like we've done that so many times, and it's really, there's just scanning this real quickly again. It's to advise and make recommendations to the mayor and city council on community issues, receive and review complaints, study the nature and causes to barriers to preserving a welcoming community. And then the rest is like outreach and education and public information and engaging residents and businesses and promoting strong neighborhoods and community connections. So I feel like we have, the listening aspect, we have the dialogue aspect, we have advising and making recommendations to the mayor and city council, and then we have education and outreach. So it's just kind of these categories. And I think our mission statement and key goals and all of that sort of captured all that and put it into practical terms for all of us. That's my 2 cents.
Well said.
I might say that you just mentioned like a dialogue aspect to the recommendations for our identity. And obviously we've learned that the open meeting law does not present a very good format for dialogue. So I think we need to talk more about that at some point, like when and how does that work, so anyway.
So I was just thinking that for a dialogue, like for example, with A Knee Is Not Enough or other community members, that we could easily set up some kind of forum, separate, it's not a meeting, it's just a, an opportunity for just that, for dialogue, and create an event and promote that.
Okay,
Not within the context of a meeting.
right. Mhm. Okay. I'm all for that. Forum sometimes sounds like people speaking, and yeah, I don't know, we just have to make sure we're really, like, we have all of our goals figured out and a really good facilitator and the whole bit, because
Yeah, I agree. We need someone who's got some real strong experience in facilitating that kind of session.
And so, and that's on our list of things that we want to do, but we haven't moved past saying we want to hold a forum.
Can I ask a question about that logistically? Because I know we had talked about doing sort of that thing before we are now regulated, before we have to use Zoom. So my question is this something that then has to be recorded? I mean, how does this, having a forum or a meeting or a gathering or however the words that we're going to use, and if it involves the CRC, does that fall under open meeting laws again? Do we need to record it? Does it have to be as, for lack of a better word, structured as a regular committee meeting? I guess I'm unclear how that would work over Zoom as opposed to if we were to have a gathering, you know, a meeting, which again, I don't know if that would need to be recorded and how that all works out.
Well,
On the auspices of the city. If anybody could fill me in, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I think we would need to figure out what we wanted the forum to be. And my thought would be that we, first of all, we're off our agenda topic right now, just to say that. But I think we want to discuss what we want the forum to be. Do we want it to be experts, having a panel of experts with a really strong facilitator that's not one of us, so we're sponsoring the forum. It's not necessarily us facilitating the forum. And so I think if unless somebody knows the answer, Deb, I don't know if you know the answer to Deb. I think the question would be, if we're doing this on Zoom and all the CRC members are there, but CRC is just sponsoring this, is that then an open meeting? I would also think that maybe we could get Easthampton Media involved somehow to help coordinate, the tech side of it. I don't know if that's a thing. So we need to envision what we want the forum to look like, and then find out, how we, in this world pandemic, we can, the technical aspects and the open meeting aspects around it. But I think we should start with what we want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then find, and kind of, organize it, and then be able to say, go to whoever the mayor and find out exactly, how we can, if we're heading down the right path.
So prior to the pandemic, we were discussing we were very in sort of having some lengthy discussions about unconscious bias and implicit bias. And it seemed like we were interested in bringing that to a forum-like platform. So one option would be to sponsor something related to unconscious bias, to have people who are experts in that area and think about how that plays out in, vis-a-vis our city. And then there could be some models have it as you have a forum where people speak, and then there's a second event, which maybe happens a week later or could happen right afterwards, where there's actually an opportunity for dialogue and for actually sort of exchange, or having other people kind of speak about what they've heard or how it's affected them, or that's why sometimes it can be good to have sort of some time for processing. So there's all kinds of models for how to do something like that. Have an educational component and then more of a listening or dialogue. But we really were moving prior to the pandemic towards something related to that. We were having a lot of discussions about that. So it's just a reminder from way back when.
I think one of those kinds of options sounds perfect. And we're not limited, like we can have any sort of event that we want to, and we're not held to open meeting laws, except for the fact that it has to be accessible to everyone, of course. But we can hold any kind of non-meeting event that however we'd like to craft it.
As we move this forward, I'm wondering if, because I see that there are a number of kind members at the meeting, one of the issues is keeping, having a dialogue, keeping up communication with them. And what about working together to come up with a meeting on bias, unconscious bias, etc. That is one of the things about how do we broaden our range, and which we talked about a lot last meeting, but which is very huge to me, is the difference between us as a community relations committee appointed, by the mayor, and also a committee in Easthampton versus an ad hoc, political action group that can call each other at 11 o'clock at night. I'll meet you at 8, and you can just talk all the time and make arrangements. You and I can't even say, which I said this before, oh gee, I like that logo. That's a violation of the open meeting. So
well, we did talk about having, again, a while ago, we talked about having liaisons, right? So having, for example, a CRC liaison with the school and with other community groups. And I think that's one potential way to create some of these bridges. And actually right now, I think rethinking that piece about the school would be really good because I think that could be very beneficial right now. So, there's models out there for kind of how we might do that. One person is, liaison to different groups. So we could have a knee is not enough liaison, a school liaison. There's probably other important groups. I'm, not thinking about Treehouse. We discussed having a liaison to Treehouse.
The business community, there's a million points of contact, yeah.
But in terms of like planning what we want to do, I think we as a group should be able to come up with a plan for how we would want to structure some kind of, a forum and provide the opportunity for dialogue and all. Like we should be able to come up with, I would think we could make those decisions to come up with a plan for how we would proceed, right?
Absolutely. I think that's one of our jobs.
Yeah. Does everyone else agree or no?
Please don't mind my shaking my head, family. I was telling family, no, you do not interrupt me. Sorry about that.
I'm realizing how difficult it is to get a consensus or make a decision when we're all just staring at each other and looking at ourselves. It's just like, I can't even communicate. I can hardly function in this. Yes, the thing is that, who's going to do X, who's going to do Y, breaking it down and moving it forward. I feel like we just, whatever we call it, again, do we want to arrange this with some members of a kind? Do we want to have a work group do that? No. Okay. If I'm not exactly clear what our opening dialogue and getting different members of the community involved in a forum is about then.
Well, I shouldn't say no right off the bat. I think, again, so in my opinion is that somebody needs to be in charge of the forum. One person needs to be like the chair of the forum committee. That person, you know, and it doesn't mean they do everything by themselves. And I don't necessarily, I don't think yet that we would want to yet invite any other community organization in to help organize this, because this is us sponsoring a forum. And then maybe it's something we consider in the future. I don't know, but I think I feel like we are struggling with our identity. And I think if we have, you know, one group come in, then why not another, and then why not another, and then we're going to end up really muddying the waters. So what I think is that we need one person to say, I feel strongly about the forum. This is something that I can take on sort of facilitating, and everybody else will help, and everybody else will be super involved. But at least then one person is, when we are having our meetings, can be like, all right, at our last meeting, we came up with this list of things that need to be done for the forum. You know, who's going to do this? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do this? Being in charge of doing everything. But we have to start having a conversation about what we want the forum to look like. And we have to, and I feel like everybody keeps saying, well, we're not doing anything. Well, we're not, because we're not doing it. So let's, you know, if somebody's taking notes, if you got, you know, we need to just start writing down what we want it to be. And I strongly feel like somebody who feels strongly about the forum needs to kind of step up and say, I'll be the one that sort of keeps tabs, but doesn't do everything. But that's just my opinion.
May I ask where on the agenda we are?
We are still under, unfortunately, we are still
Are we under new business?
This is
Because
Pat.
I know we have not discussed the incoming correspondence or communications. So are we still under new business?
So we are under new business.
Okay, so I feel like I'm being like incredibly rude because I'm sitting here in this meeting with all these like highly competent, brilliant people, and I haven't introduced myself. And I'd sort of like to do that, and I'd sort of like to give you guys a break because you're working so hard. So let me entertain you for a minute and tell you what I might be able to do for you.
Great.
Is that okay with you guys? I really don't mean to be presumptuous. You've been doing this, what, since 2018? So, you know, I'm very new here, but my experience is that I've lived in Easthampton for 15 years. Prior to that, I lived overseas for 23 years. I was a United Nations human rights observer, and I was a political asylum caseworker in conflict zones. So I'm really good at facilitating meetings of people with really conflicting points of view. And I would observe that this committee was created in response to a specific issue, which was an incident in the school system. And so your list of responsibilities is sort of in reverse order, right? Number 8 ought to be number 1. Issues come and issues go, right? So I don't think that it's a waste of time, as many of you have suggested, to sort of work on process and structure. I think that's really important. And specifically, since I have the floor just for another minute, I notice that one of the responsibilities, I'm madly going through my Google Drive here, is to receive reports of discrimination or I don't want to misquote it. So
It says, may receive and review complaints of discrimination, harassment, or violation of civil and/or human rights brought forward to the Community Relations Committee by any person, regardless of the person's physical address or citizenship status.
thank you so much. And I don't know that there is any intake document or any process for compiling those reports. There is no process for responding to those reports. The mayor's office does not have a community relations liaison who goes to speak to the Gazette when they say, hey, we heard a report that people at the club on Union Street were acting silly. You know, so you have these smaller issues, and I'm not in any way suggesting that these issues are unimportant, but they're pieces of a much bigger pie, which has a center at what this group actually does, regardless of what the issue is. And so I'd like to assist with two things. One is process, facilitating meetings, and the other is designing and implementing those kind of intake reports of discriminatory practices or civil rights violations that people would like to report. And that's all. And I live over at the Oxbow, and if anybody wants to come hike on Mount Tom, just give me a buzz and I'll show you the trail up. So that's me, that's all.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. I want to share that at one point, I don't know, 6 months ago, I received a report from the police about the hate crimes. They collect, you know, all the information on the hate crimes in the community, and we had that to look at, but we did not have a process on how to deal with them yet. And we didn't.
You have a document?
Yep, somewhere in my email I've got it, and I shared it with folks, but we didn't know what to deal. We didn't have a process for dealing with that yet, unfortunately.
But you do have a document, which is important.
Yep.
And the police department has a data analysis function. I don't know, I saw a request from someone and I didn't mean to ignore it. I took the use of force by sworn personnel document and turned it into a very simple Google slide presentation. I didn't comment or add anything or detract anything. It was just to make it easy to understand what it says. You know, so I note that they have a recording and analysis function, which is done at least once a year. Surely the results of that analysis must likewise be public domain.
Somewhere, right. Exactly.
So with your permission, for our next meeting, I'll prepare a document. And I think that it would be great if this community had an online presence, like a shared drive. So when we put up the use of force by sworn personnel document, poor Akine doesn't have to search the entire internet to find it, that it would be easily accessible. And again, I suggest to you strongly that issues come and issues go, but that the primary role of the Community Relations Committee is to be that trusted interface between the town and the government to provide information, a two-way flow of information. And so I'm really interested in doing that, much more than I am in having any sort of political input.
One of the issues we were talking about was accessibility and visibility, and especially, you know, in terms of having a website, in terms of having, you know, that's back to another item on the agenda, right? Around kind of having some sort of presence and that kind of a clear interface for people to access information, which I think all of us have been incredibly frustrated with the really kind of unwieldy difficulties around just even finding just one document. So that is something that is bigger than our group, that we've continued to kind of wrestle with, that I think is actually a pretty big priority. Making sure that people can access the information and know when the meetings are held, and how to apply to be on the CRC is actually super important.
And I think that goes back to some of the work that Deb was, you know, was doing in trying to help create an identity around our committee so that we are recognizable as a committee that can do all the things that Kathy was just talking about. Because if we can have the information there, but I think that's why it's important. One of the things that kept happening was this, this start and stop. Like, well, how do people know about us? Well, let's work on getting, creating, this identity, this face that we can put out to the community. Then,
Someone's mic is open.
like it was fluff, but it's important. It's important for us to be an identifiable committee that folks feel comfortable coming to, so that we can have that interface. So that brings us to one of the other things that was on our agenda to do, which was to create an identity so that and do community outreach around our committee. And Deb, I don't know, you speak much more about that than I do. So.
Well, no, just that I always felt from the beginning it's important that we have an identity for ourselves, if it's something visual and something that we can use to be the face of our committee to the community. And it's just like step one, basically, in marketing anything. So anyway, we do have our graphic designer who's working on revisions, and she said she would have revised options for us by the end of August. So I'm sure at our next meeting, we'll have more for us to look at so we can fine tune that and zero in on making a decision. So yeah, I just see that as an important step so that we can establish a Facebook page, we can establish a website, we can do all these things to begin to have that presence and have that organizational piece to ourselves as well for accessing information.
And Alyssa is working on that. She's just one of the people, she's not here tonight, but is anybody else working on that with Alyssa?
Working on what exactly?
I thought she's working on a web page.
Oh, we talked about Facebook. We were going to, she had said she would take the lead on Facebook, and I said I would help her out. And, but we really need to get those identity pieces up running first, I think, before getting out there. We need to have that logo, to have that, like, I mean, we can start working on some behind the scenes things, but in terms of actually launching it, which doesn't take long to do at all, I think it'd be good if we kind of had our ducks in a row.
I want to just say something. I'm speaking for myself, and this is just an opinion, and I'm, we're going to have votes, at some point on some of this stuff, I believe, but I think, I will say that I have some hesitation about having a Facebook page or having too many different ways to reach us. I don't know. And I think we also have to realize that we're always going to be linked to the city and the authority or establishment or something. And so we're not always going to be well liked, no matter how hard we try or how hard we try to make a nice, welcoming logo. I think, we have to prove ourselves by, responding to, the reports of discrimination and all of that. And I'm just hesitant about, I don't know, about expecting to have a nice presence, well-known, in the community. Like, I think we have to realize that we're not always going to be well-liked, especially because we've already seen that our largely white presence is not looked as diverse enough. Kathy, it looks like you want to say something.
Yeah, no, I really like what you're saying, and I want to gather my thoughts for another moment, so please go ahead. But then I'd like to suggest something.
Right. I don't know. I don't know what else I can say other than I think, you know, we have to
May
just, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
You're absolutely right that whatever this committee does is going to be tied to the city of Easthampton, which we should turn to our advantage by borrowing a little bit of gravitas. And all I would say at this meeting, because I'm so new here and I'm so impressed with like the hard work that all of you have already done, is that if you will permit me at the next meeting to be on your new business thing, and then I'll put up the links to the Google slide presentations and kind of talk a little bit about, you know, what community relations in general would look like if we want to promote that image, and then specifically how to run a human rights violation intake. So I just would request respectfully your permission to address those two topics at the next meeting. And the Google slide presentations are online, and I believe Rebecca has the link, and if not, email me. I know someone did and I lost.
They are sent. We have them.
Yep.
Hi, Mary Lou.
I haven't, they came out, you sent them today, Rebecca. I haven't had a chance to
But
look
you-
at.
She has to give us permission.
Oh, all right. So I'll go back. I mean, I noticed that somebody asked me for the permission
did.
and I couldn't find it again.
I
So
I was
I'll
able to open them. I was able to open them.
was able to open one, but not the other. So
And this goes back to exactly what you guys were saying about our digital presence, because it shouldn't be on my drive to share to you all. It should be in the city drive, and it should be transparent and available to everyone in the city, including us and every other person who has access to the city website. I remember just last week I was at the Atkins March, you know, and one of the speakers was saying, we acknowledge, you know, that the use of force by sworn personnel, the police department responded to us, and gee, it would be really nice if we could find those things online when we want them. And I really felt it for her, you know, because it's so true. Sources should be immediately accessible on a drive, which is run by the town.
I have to say, I have looked on the city website for a number of things in various categories and usually cannot find it. I think it's a systemic problem that I'm not sure how much we can do other than maybe getting stuff posted on our actual page on the city government website.
And make the site searchable.
It seems to be a systemic problem with the city and finding information.
Yeah, and you know what? When we say that, I mean, I really don't want to criticize anyone. Right? I remember when I was at UMass and dinosaurs ruled the earth. You know, Easthampton was the place where they rolled up the sidewalks at 9 o'clock at night. So if, you know, some of the old guard who took this town from nothing to something, I really give them credit. But if they're not really, you know, digital citizens of 2020, that's okay. But we can do that, and it's a priority.
So,
I don't know if I can be heard.
so we were stuck in reviewing the establishment of the ordinance, and then we broke to hear from Kathy, which was a great break. Thank you very much. And now shall we go to incoming correspondence and communication? Can everybody say yay?
So can I just ask Patty, then when we get to old business, will we jump back into our conversation as to our action plan, what we're going to do going forward here?
Well, that's a great question, Deb.
because we kind of dabbled in this conversation out of order, not really sticking to point A. But so I just want to make sure that we're gonna at some point continue to flesh out like our next steps, our action plan.
Well, shall we go through everything and then do our action plan last?
Under the old business category that we have listed. I think that makes sense.
And then next steps as a committee?
Yes.
That would make sense.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want to make sure we get to that.
Yep. Yes, I agree. So there was the resignation of Jane, the sad resignation of Jane Hamill.
Right.
Is there something we're saying about that, or?
I'd just like to say thank her for her service and tell her that it was a pleasure working with her and we were sad to see her go. That's all I have to say.
I would echo that if you can hear me. I'd be pleased to write something to tell her that.
Okay, so
That'd be
Rebecca, you're going to thank Jane for her service? You're going to write something? Okay.
The letter from Lynn Wanamaker, the next thing on the list. I know it was directed to our chairperson, and I know I sent you a copy of it because she sent me a copy separately in the mail at home, and I did reply to her. I didn't send you my reply, which I could do, but I did reply to her. But I'm guessing that she didn't get a response from the official committee, because I replied to her speaking as an individual, because not being the chairperson, I didn't have the authority to speak for the committee. So I just sent her, she sent it to me personally, so I sent it back, like from my speaking as an individual, not on behalf of the committee. So I just want to let you know I did reply to her, but I know she has, I'm assuming that Jane never replied, so that she doesn't have an official response from the committee. I guess we could set that aside to then figure out when we get down to officers, to figure out who would be the best person to be responding to these things.
Right, to Kathy's point, like we don't have a process figured out for this yet. But then I also know that, like what she said, like issues come and issues go. So I do think some sort of response is necessary. I don't know if another response is necessary if you did already write individually. Do you think is Lynn expecting a response from the committee?
Well, that's just an assumption since she addressed it to Jane Hamill, chair of the committee. I'm just assuming.
Okay.
And then I got a copy separately, but I just thought it would be nice to have a response from the committee, but that needs to come from someone who can speak for the committee, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it seems like in a work session, we're going to have to decide what that letter says and everyone approve it, right?
Yes.
Doesn't seem like we can send a letter that only 3 people saw, right? And are we not able to send that via email to each other to figure it out?
No, you can't do that via email. You can share the correspondence, but you can't discuss a response via email. That you can't do that.
Mm-hmm. So then, yeah.
So Emily, you don't have the letter because we did get the letter. I think you copied it to us, Deb.
Yes.
Yes, you copied it to us.
Yep.
So might Deb draft a letter and present it at the next meeting, and then as acting chair, Rebecca could electronically sign it so that this lady who I was unfortunate enough not to meet would know of your esteem.
So yes, that's perfect. We had discussed, particularly if potentially a letter came in, and we weren't meeting for a number of weeks, that the chair could respond with, could give a response that says, we received your letter. This will be on the next meeting agenda, and we will formulate a response, so that somebody's not waiting potentially 3 weeks or something for a response. So that was one thing we discussed, I think, at our last meeting.
I think it's really important. I'm so glad you said that.
And we also, I mean, we don't have, every letter that comes in doesn't have to be an agenda item at some future point. I mean, we can respond in a way that's less specific, and just thanking the person for their input, and knowing that the communication will be shared with everyone on the committee to make sure it's, emailed to everyone so everyone has a copy of it. And that we, basically appreciate their input, and, we hope to, make, important contributions in this area as we progress, more of a generic statement, so that every piece of correspondence, like we may end up as things roll, we may end up with lots of correspondence. And I don't think we need to get bogged down as a committee in evaluating all of us evaluating how to respond to every single thing. Just if the chairperson just has the by virtue of their role, the authority to speak for the committee, and that just to entrust that person to do so thoughtfully and carefully. I think that's part of the job, to just entrust them to be, to have that authority to speak for us, but to do so in a way that they know that everyone would approve of.
And I think that response could also invite somebody to come to public speak if they feel comfortable.
Yeah. That's always a nice invitation.
So how do we operationalize that? How does Lynn Wanamaker get a note from us?
So I just think that let's when we get to the point of officers, so we know who our chairperson is going to be. We know, I mean, we could have a secretary too. It's just someone's given the authority to be able to respond to these things on our behalf, and if they want to wait and get input, that's perfectly fine. But, as we get rolling, there may in fact be lots of things that could be handled much more simply and directly without input from the whole committee. And we'd of course be sharing all this with everybody just as FYI through email. But, I don't think we need to get bogged down where we all have to discuss every letter that comes to us. That some things could be handled simply and easily. But I'm just suggesting that that this would come under the direction of whomever we decide for officers. And it could be the chair that does it and speaks on behalf, or we could have a secretary that does that. I mean, depending on how we want to structure it.
We can't vote tonight, but we could be prepared for what our vote might be.
We got you, Rebecca.
Okay, yes.
Presumably, if, for example, Deb was to draft a letter, and then Rebecca was to present it to the membership, if we were all to approve it, then Rebecca could go ahead and send it, and that only needs to take about 2 minutes in a meeting. And it is very true that we need not formally address every piece of correspondence that comes to us, but an awful lot of what comes in, we really want to establish that presence.
And so the only thing with this specific example is that I've already responded to her. So
Yes.
it would be great, instead of me responding again, if Rebecca, like if you might be willing to draft something just in this instance. I'm happy in the future to do it, but it just seems a little awkward to me because I've already responded to her as an individual. Is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, is there town letterhead? I mean, the lady served, I don't know, I didn't meet her, but it just seems like, yeah, they're just not in this particular case. Again, you've been like really established for specific reasons, and you need that general process. When we want to say something to someone, we write the letter, the chair presents it to the membership says yes, and off it goes. I mean, it seems to me like you guys have been doing a lot of the heavy lifting for a really long time without the advantages of a process that makes your life easier. That's all.
Yeah. And I think we can create those processes and make all our lives a whole lot easier. Like, we can definitely create these processes. It doesn't have to be hard, right?
Right, exactly. I really want to say I'm
I
so
might
you're all heroes.
mention, hoping that you can hear me, that I think what I would do if it were me, that I would propose, like, this is what I'm going to send, but I can't ask for a vote outside of the meeting. So I think I would send it unless somebody says no, because I think one person could say no. But other than that, I could just say, this is what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think to Deb's point, when the chair is empowered, I think if we come up with some basic language for a response, it doesn't mean we're not fully looking at what the letter contains and thinking about it. And certainly if we feel like something specifically needed to be addressed. But I think to Deb's point is we're empowering the chair to respond, and there has to be a level of trust in the chair that they're responding. And that is, that becomes the mechanism, so that it's not every time having to come up with something different.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, do you all realize that Kathy thinks that you're talking about the letter to Jane and not about the letter that you received?
Oh, who said that?
I'm sorry, I know that I'm not supposed to speak, but that Kathy is thinking that you're talking about the letter you're drafting to Jane, but I believe you're talking about a letter that the CRC received from somebody from the public.
We are, yes. Is that correct, Kathy?
Yes, we are talking about the letter from Lynn Wanamaker.
Thank you. I was confused, but actually I'm talking about both. But thank you, yes.
Okay, sorry. Thank you for clarifying that. Didn't realize. So same with regard to like the email from Deb Friedman. I mean, it's been a while since I read that email, but I'm just feeling very stressed by the fact that it's been a long time already. And I think we need to acknowledge that, but that can all fall under the responsibilities of either the secretary or the chair when we just figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
So does everybody agree at this point that we can, that we will, so I would just want to be clear, what Deb is suggesting is that when we move down in the agenda tonight, we're going to discuss CRC officers, and that at that point, we can designate who can respond to Lynn and Deb Freeman, and I think, let them know we received their feedback and we take it very seriously, and we're working on addressing all these issues. So at the very least, these people feel heard. I think it's really important that the community feel heard by us, and yeah. So can we all, is that what we're agreeing to?
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Super.
Good.
Should we move on to Rebecca's Meeting with the mayor?
Sorry, there's the comments provided to Mary Lou on here. I don't.
I had a conversation, and I think this goes to, again, marketing identity. I ran into someone who wondered what was going on with the Community Relations Committee, whether it was still there, what kind of things we would take on. And she just brought up two things, and this kind of gets to procedure for me. These weren't complaints. These were just things she wanted to present. She felt that while she appreciated, I don't think appreciated is the word, but she understood what about having the military, the banners that are up on the flagpoles that they put up around Memorial Day for service members. She does not understand why they have to stay up from Memorial Day all the way through Veterans Day. She feels like it presents a militaristic idea of Easthampton and again, that was one thing she presented. She also said, the way I come into Easthampton is off of Route 5, but she said that she sees a lot of Crime Watch signs, Crime Watch community, no loitering signs, surveillance camera in use. I can't tell you where they are because I actually have tried to pay attention when I come into town and I don't see evidence of that. But I guess it points more to if somebody comes to the committee with issues, whatever they are, in this case, what do we do with something like that? So that they're heard, whether it's a complaint for harassment or something of, I don't like the fact that they fly the American flag over the pond, or, I think, and one of the other things she mentioned was there should be more flags of different kinds flying in Easthampton, although she didn't specify what. But I mean, what do you do with something, with those issues and opinions that are important to that person?
Mm-hmm.
How do you address it? And I, said, we're kind of like a liaison, but she said, yeah, but I don't feel comfortable. What if I don't feel comfortable? Like if they say I should talk to X department,
Mm-hmm.
what if, what is our role for that kind of situation? If I'm making myself even remotely clear.
You are. Yeah, you are.
So what do we do with something? I mean, this is pretty, in the overall schemes of a lot of things, this is probably a small, very defined thing you could deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how do you deal with that? I mean, what is our procedure? What would we handle with that?
Kathy, why don't you speak?
Well, when I was working for the United Nations and for the International Organization for Migration, what we did with that is we took a report. And if we were empowered to do so, we spoke to the other principals involved, the chief of police, who put up the signs. It might be something as simple as there was a crime wave in that area. People were breaking into folks' garages or something, so they put up those signs. What are perceptions? What is the law regarding these things? Who are the people involved? Do they know each other? Is there animosity between them already or not, etc.? And then that documentation becomes a valuable part of your historical record, even if there's no law breaking involved, or if nobody decides to take down the signs, or if they do decide to take, you have documentation that documents, what can I say? And what I found by doing that work, I mean, as a result of the documentation that we did in Haiti, we engineered a multinational military response that restored constitutional government. This stuff is incredibly powerful. Now, fortunately, we're not dealing with, men in uniform gunning down people at the polls in Easthampton, but the principle remains the same. Taking the information, documenting it, and investigating it, and documenting the results of the investigation are hugely important, and it's what I do. So I'm really liking the idea.
So you see that as one of our, I would think, main functions then, is to
Well,
take in that?
it's not my place to say what your main function should be, because again, you've all been like heroically doing this long before I came here, but somewhere in there it is receive and review complaints of discrimination, harassment, or violation of civil and human rights. One of the rights that you have is to a peaceful life. So, there's just so much work to be done around this, and the basis again is documentation and intake of those complaints, which people's perceptions are important, and it's important that we respond to them appropriately. So I really want to do that. So that's all.
Great. That's awesome.
And you can investigate, nobody has to deputize you. I could walk down to one of the businesses that has this Crime Watch sign and say, hey, what's up? You had a burglary? What's going on, dude? It's not illegal. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. And it's okay to report that, we were advised to put up these signs by the Easthampton Police Department or not, right? We decided to do this because there were break-ins or not. These are things that we want to record and document, regardless of how we later interpret that data.
Sounds good, Kathy.
I'd be quiet now.
Sounds good. I'll sign you up.
So do you guys want to know where we are now? So we are at Rebecca report regarding her meeting with the mayor, which may be challenging. So maybe Rebecca can give us a really shortened version so we can try and understand as much as possible.
I think what I would say, when I unmute, my connection is worse. Also, when I emailed, I did email something of a report. Did you receive that? It could be that if someone has the email, you could look at that.
Rebecca, are you saying that the information you wanted to share is already in the email you sent us?
Yeah, I have it right here. I can read it.
Yes, good. I have it too. Yeah.
Okay. It says, meeting with Mayor LaChapelle. My anticipated Zoom meeting with the mayor took place today, and I took the opportunity to ask a number of questions. Part of the meeting was about the proposed work group that is anticipated to include a couple of CRC members and possibly A-kind members. It sounds like the work group will have the benefit of some input from an HCC professor who teaches criminal justice and teaches police. I volunteered to be included, so I anticipate learning more about it. With regard to mayoral meetings with me or the CRC chairperson, it seems that these were offered to review process, questions regarding chairing a meeting, open meeting law, Zoom hosting, etc. This week, I already took steps to educate myself on the city's Zoom system and am optimistic about its use. As a side note, I've already been using Zoom for the past 17 months or so. That said, I did receive updates, including Kathy's appointment as a member of the CRC. I also asked the mayor whether she had knowledge regarding recent votes of the Massachusetts legislature and whether the legislature had passed items that A-kind hoped to see. The mayor shook her head no and advised that the legislature, quote, kicked it down the road. Mayor LaChapelle suggests we may want to invite input from Brian Corr, from Mildred of the DOJ, both of whom we met at the time of our initial trainings, and we also may want to hear from our state representatives, Dan Carey or John Vilas. Perhaps, for example, our representatives can provide an update with regard to state legislation. Finally, regarding Zoom attendance of people who serve in various municipal capacities, the mayor indicated that board members have been showing their names, followed by their departments. Thus, the recommendation for our liaison, Dennis Scribner, would be Dennis Scribner -EPD. As for myself, I will show Rebecca Pasa-CRC. This is at least my understanding, and I will be pleased to ask people to conform in this manner.
Great.
Thank you.
Rebecca.
I'm a good reader.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions about that? I guess my question is, should we be putting on our agenda how we would potentially inviting Dan Carey or John Velas to a meeting? And do we want to reconnect with Brian Corr in some way, or invite him as well to a working meeting? Should we?
I do not want to, well, we can add it for much later business, but I don't necessarily want to meet with have the state reps. That we need to just keep bringing ourselves in and moving us forward.
Great.
I agree. I agree that just in terms of prioritizing things and moving things along, I think that maybe we could do that down the road a little bit, but like right now, we just need to focus on our action elements and moving forward.
Okay, moving along. Discussion of our response to correspondence, including but not limited to the development of a response to a kind presentation. See city's initial response to a kind included in the attached materials. We also expect to review relevant Massachusetts bills and/or legislation. Wow, this was an ambitious agenda.
Really?
My intention was to be able to discuss it. I'm sure we can table things.
Well, in some way, I'm thinking that the response to the A-Kind presentation is going to be reflected in our action plan, like what we intend to do moving forward as a committee. You know, I think on some level that speaks volumes for our response.
Seems like it deserves its own time, its own, you know, a big section of a meeting, and we've already been, you know, now we're half an hour or 40 minutes beyond where we thought we would be. So I think this was a bit ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Can I just ask, what is, has there been any development? I know Margaret, you and Rebecca, both of you had volunteered to be CRC representatives on the work group. What has happened with that? Have you heard anything? I mean,
I have not, but I think Rebecca has.
I think that was addressed in Rebecca's notes from her meeting with the mayor, that seems to be in process.
okay.
And there looks like they're going to have a professor from HCC maybe help facilitate or something. I think that's what they said.
Okay, so no, I mean, the group has not been formed as such.
Not to my knowledge, not to my knowledge. Has it been formed yet? Rebecca, do you know?
We're still waiting to hear about its formation at first meeting. We're still waiting.
Okay.
I think though that we, just like any group doing a presentation for us, and the PowerPoint that A-Kind did, I do, you know, thanking people for doing that and that it was very helpful, etc. I think we need to just submit a, you know, just like anything else, be respectful and submit a response. Yes, so again, back to the point person who's going to be the secretary.
May I observe that the copy of the initial response to A Kind Demands that I first saw, I saw on July 7th on the Easthampton Police Department's Facebook feed. And I thought that was a little bit of a tactical error because it should have been through the community, maybe us or some other organ of the mayor's office, rather than making it seem that these were two different forces that were discussing something between, you know, that we should have been centered in that. I thought the response was brilliant. It was resource rich. It provided tons of online links. It is, I'm sure, now on the town website. But again, that just goes back to, you know, establishing our presence. If somebody wants to know, wow, what's going on, they should be looking at this committee and our internet presence.
I had a question about the response that was the city first response to "A Knee is Not Enough," dated July 7th, was it?
That's it, July 7th.
I just wanted to know, let's see, on page 5, it says, create a community review board for police oversight that EPD must answer to and that is not housed under EPD or the mayor's purview. This community review board will be given yearly municipal group training for all members. Is that community review board supposed to be us, or is that separate? That's what I'm not clear about.
Wait.
So
is it under reform and refine? I'm looking at the document now, but I mean.
Yes, it's under reform and refine, and then the next page.
Okay, so commit to demilitarize, chokeholds. I'm scrolling, create a community review board for police oversight, right? That is not housed under EPD, okay.
Or the mayor's purview, this community review board, yeah. So I wanted to ask if I'm not clear on who that is. Because I mean, then it says, you know, Chapter 2, blah, 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 Community Relations Committee. And so that links to, okay, the link's not coming up yet, but anyway, I wanted to, yeah, I don't know.
Have we all seen this response? I have not seen this.
It was sent by Rebecca,
Okay,
I think yesterday maybe, or, yep.
Oh, a very long document, oh my.
It is, yep.
Right, maybe that's what happened.
I see, and it discusses all the different types of committees and things that we have.
I haven't seen it. It was sent yesterday by Rebecca?
Yep.
Okay, so the proposal is that we should create a community review board. So great, is that a paid community? I mean, that's something to discuss, but it's, I mean,
so
yearly municipal group training in what, by whom? This is a really great thing to talk with A Kind about.
Right.
In fact, I'm highlighting. Highlighting on the Google Doc. And by the way, you know that like when you've really got things rolling on Google, you can share documents. All of us could be looking at the same document together and commenting as we go along. And I don't think that violates the open meeting because it's open, everyone can see the comments.
Right, that would be so much more helpful. These Zoom meetings are difficult when we can't look at the same documents at the same time.
Give yourself credit. You went from paper-based to fully online in like 2 weeks, right?
Yeah. Article
all right, I've highlighted that.
11. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the link right after that says, you know, see Division 3, and it is the Easthampton Community Relations Committee. So to me, it sounds like the word board was just swapped, and it is referring to us. So
Wouldn't that be great?
yeah. Yeah.
Empower the community relations community to do police oversight, you know, edit that little thing. Then they don't have to pay for it.
Uh-huh. We will oversee yearly sensitivity training and reviewing all disciplinary action.
You know,
So,
I hate to sound like, you know, I have a serious problem with the range and breadth of our potential tasks. I never signed on to oversee the police department. That is not what I am on this committee for. I don't want to go down every rabbit hole, and I also don't want it to have these enormous responsibilities on a group of us who
right.
have finally learned each other's names. Okay. So I think you are a fabulous breath of fresh air, and you can kick our butts down the road.
No, but you're right. You don't want mission creep, and that's the work that we have to do, is just like really clearly define our role and what we do.
And really clearly define our role. And we are not, people are going to start to call us about, I don't have enough money for my heating oil. So we don't do everything. We just
My
don't.
water main is leaking.
Exactly. We don't do everything for everyone all the time. I mean, we can barely have, anyway, I'm just astounded by the potential that these documents that somebody else is creating, what we are the hell doing. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. So if that's required, it's not happening from me. So, I think we need to be realistic and think way smaller, and even be able to recite what our mission is and what, we're just not at the top of our game at all. And then all these other groups telling us how magnificent we're going to run the world and do it well. So anyways.
Well, it did make me wonder if there was some expectation set in this response that we would be able to, or we would be doing this police oversight, and we didn't even know it because we hadn't seen the response ourselves until yesterday.
I'm guessing that I haven't seen the document, so I'm not sure who wrote it, whether it came from the mayor's office or where it came from. But I'm guessing whoever wrote it, whoever is documenting all this, I'm sure that if that was something they wanted to pursue with our committee at some point down the road, it would be addressed and proposed and discussed and reviewed and all of that for consideration. But I don't think we really need to do too much with that whole thought right now. We can stay focused on our current mission and our current objectives. And if we're approached with that down the road, then, then we deal with it at that time. But at this point, I'm thinking, let's just stick with our mission as we've created it and focus on that and move forward as best we can. And that's my recommendation.
Okay.
So, so what I think I heard in there was that we did want to spend some time, did I hear this? Maybe in our next meeting, discussing our response to a kind. Did I hear that?
I guess.
No.
I feel bad, I keep talking. Sure. I guess I just keep thinking that determining what our next steps are as a committee would be the key to the response to a kind at this point. Obviously, thanking them very much for presenting to us, educating us, appreciating their presence and their voice, and here's what we're planning to do at this point for the next 3 months or whatever it is. Here's our plan. We plan to host a forum that would accomplish, would set out to accomplish this particular mission. We plan to launch a website, a Facebook page, blah, 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 that would help to facilitate communication, information sharing, blah, 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 and whatever all else. And that would be our response to a kind, as opposed to trying to formulate some kind of verbiage between us at this point when we don't have our action elements defined. So I guess I keep thinking that would be a natural fallout to saying, okay, we thank you, we hear you, we'd like to learn more. Here's what our plans are for the next few months, and we'd like to, continue to communicate with you going forward.
I'm a big fan of that plan. I think that we need to take a step back, reorient ourselves, and I totally agree with you. I think these things are intermingled, and we need to figure out, again, return to our own identity and our own kind of priorities, and then we can be much more thoughtful and hopefully helpful in our response.
Terrific. Thank you. Well said, both of you. So, moving forward to a review of CRC officers. So we currently have one officer. Rebecca is our vice chair. Deb, you've mentioned a couple times the possibility of a secretary. At our last meeting, there was discussion of having 2 chairs in order to help, even out the load that can go on to a single chair. My personal opinion is a secretary and 2 chairs sounds like a good structure to me. But perhaps we need to say that and then talk about who we would like to put forth for those positions. Discuss.
So I just have one comment. Like ordinarily for a group our size, I would think that we wouldn't need 2 chair people. But I also have noticed that over time, we seem to, when it comes to saying who's willing to do this and who's willing to do that, we're all silent. And I think on some level that's a reflection not of our interest and our commitment and our desire to be impactful, but more about people's lives are so busy and they're overwhelmed and stressed and have so much going on. So that said, maybe it makes sense to have, if it's a matter of like sharing the load, for leadership, I think that could make sense.
I agree.
Are we allowed to make our suggestions for actual personnel for these officers?
Yeah, I would think so.
We just can't vote for them right now, right?
Right, we can't vote, right.
Well, I think you're all wonderful and hardworking and probably super busy. And I'm sort of weighing some of that, but I'm also, when I suggest these names, I'm not meaning to dismiss people's busyness at all. But I guess I might recommend Rebecca and Patty to be co-chairs and Deb to be secretary. And again, you're all wonderful and smart and all of that. So
I like that choice.
I also agree. And Deb, you just seem to have such a way with words. And I think also you've had a lot of experience with the school committee that a lot of us are lacking in that. I know I am, to speak for myself, I'm lacking in that kind of that perspective and being able to know how to deal with situations that I know must have been contentious when you were on the school committee. So I think you've got a lot of experience behind you that I know I don't have. And
That's actually one of the reasons I was going to suggest Deb for a co-chair position, because of her very rich history with the schools and really her very detailed knowledge of how these meetings work, of how committees work, how to, manage a lot of different perspectives and very complex issues. So.
I'd like to add my voice to support Deb. Deb has done so much, including run the campaigns to have our schools built. She's chaired, the school committee. She's, chaired it during a very tumultuous time. And I really feel like, honestly, we need somebody who can cut through and already doesn't have to learn the position. Deb knows how to run a meeting. She knows the rules. She knows this town, and she has the experience that I feel pretty strongly we need somebody to help move us forward and continue to, actually start having some action.
Well, you're all very kind.
I would say for myself, I appreciate the vote of confidence. Deb and I worked together on the Committee for Better Schools for building the high school, and we worked really well together. And so I would feel very confident working side by side with Deb as co-chair.
I think that sounds great. I mean, how people work together is, I think, going to make this easier for whoever takes it on. So to feel like they have somebody else who they work, who they worked with or work effectively with.
Rebecca, I feel like you keep us so organized. You also are so good. Your minutes are fabulous. Would you continue in that role as secretary? You have to unmute.
I wish I had solved the computer problem. But thank you. Maybe you can hear me. I find when I'm muted, I hear you better. But thank you. Yeah, I'm pleased to support this committee in whatever way I can support you, and that's fine. So, and maybe I would ask the chairs. So far, the chair had done the agenda. Maybe they can be clear with me on just which pieces I'm doing, but I can continue doing minutes. I think tonight with my difficulties, somebody may be taking notes. I can also watch the video, assuming it looks like it's recording all right.
Emily was taking notes.
I'm taking minutes, and they're way too detailed, I'm sure.
And I've also taken minutes. I can write what I have and send them to you, Emily. Okay.
So on our agenda for our next meeting.
Thank you.
So on the agenda for our next meeting, we would be voting for officers.
Do we want to ask if there's any other nominations and any other self-nominations?
Absolutely. Great. Okay. So getting back to a further discussion of our next steps, and I know we're at 7:51 on my computer here, and we did want to get to a couple things quickly, Deb, possibly?
Oh, just, I wanted to make sure we had some next steps outlined. That's what I was thinking.
Okay.
So that we're making progress moving forward for what we want to pursue.
So our agenda for the next meeting would be voting on officers, and conversation about our outreach work, our Facebook logo, and Kathy, you were going to put together the presentation and also the intake documents.
Yes, I'll make available the Google slide presentation. Hopefully people will have a chance to view it. My email is Kathy S. Gray, KATHYSGREY @gmail.com. I'm sure there's a group email. I'll share it to everybody. And then yes, specifically the model of intake of complaints of discrimination that we might want to look at.
Super. So Kathy, this is your email. You received this update with the group email.
Okay.
You're in there.
Have you, what, you already sent it? I don't know. Let me see.
Email that was sent
Today. So no, August 7th, you're on the August 7th email, and I think you're on all of.
Great. So we have your email is the point.
Okay. I'll review my emails and I'm sure I'll find them. And if anybody doesn't, you have mine, and just send me an email and I'll share all those Google Slides presentations to you, and hopefully people can review them before we come into the next meeting, if they're of any use.
And Rebecca, since you still are the only officer, can you submit the agenda for next time's meeting? Because you're technically the only officer at this point.
We also have to decide the next meeting time and date.
Thank you. Yeah, so when is our next meeting then?
Before we move on, Patty, can I just make one comment? With regard to the Google Docs that Kathy's referring to, I just would like us to double check. I'm a little concerned that editing a Google Doc could be a violation of the open meeting law. So I'd just like to check on that before anybody does any editing of any sort. It's obviously perfectly fine to share them, but that makes me, I'm just not sure that would be okay, because that's.
Right, I'm not anticipating that anybody will edit the Google slide document. Okay. When we get rolling though on Zoom, you can put up a Google Doc that everyone can see who's in the room, and people can edit during the meeting, and it's visible to everyone.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I just wanted, when you just mentioned the Google Doc, it just made me nervous, like thinking you doing that.
Yeah, very important.
So for obvious reasons, I did not dare screen share tonight. I am happy to do the next agenda. I may ask our nominees here for input. I didn't mean to put too much work on, but I wanted to make sure we could discuss all those things if we wanted to. So, but perhaps with input, I will look at an agenda together.
So today's the 11th. Tuesdays have been working for people. There is Tuesday did we decide at meeting last week that we wanted to try to meet a little bit more often, or is that just too much for people. And what I'll say is so 2 weeks from today would be August 25th. Oops. 3 weeks is September
1st.
and 4 weeks is September 8th.
I'm willing to meet sooner if that works for other people.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think
Is
we can
it
get the ball
September
rolling too.
Yeah.
When is Labor Day weekend? Isn't September 1st part of that or something?
September 7th is Labor Day.
Oh, okay. I mean, 2 weeks is the 25th. I wouldn't mind, but whatever.
I can do the 25th, especially if we were to roll through some of these agenda items and keep it to an hour. I could
Right.
totally do that.
Or at least an hour, at least maybe an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Less than 2.
It seems like maybe voting on,
25th is good.
and actually, wait, the next meeting would be public so that we could do the voting?
Yes.
It would have to be, yeah.
Okay.
Well, they're all public, just,
Oh, right. Right.
But we would include public speak in it then.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So are we saying Tuesday the 25th at 6 o'clock?
Yes.
Yes.
Super. And Rebecca,
Are we also going to write letters in response to Lynn and Deb Friedman and go over those? Like I can offer to write a response to one of them.
well, I think what we want to do is we want to craft a response that we talked about earlier.
The general one.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want me to craft that?
That would be awesome. Thank you.
great,
Okay.
Super.
that'd be great. So I'm wondering if, before we go, could we come up with just like one step forward with regard to the forum type thing we might want to hold, or whatever you want to call it? I'm not sure what to call it, but could we just move that agenda, that plan, that thought a step forward to maybe help us, and so that maybe even we have some homework assignments between now and our next meeting?
So what kind of action, I'm sorry, I spaced out a bit. What kind of action item would you like?
I was just hoping we could maybe just have a better idea of what we're doing to move forward, so that if we have people that need to look into getting certain speakers or thinking about dates or figuring out how, like logistically, how we do this, like if we could all have a plan so that we could be doing something to move that forward in the next 2 weeks.
I know. Well, earlier Deb suggested that like one person take the lead on the forum or presentation or dialogue. I agree there should be one person to at least start it and
decide what we want to do. Like what's the goal? What do we want to try to accomplish with this plan?
I think this seems like a lot to start right now, because the idea of like getting to the next step is going to take us another half an hour.
Okay.
And I've been on, yeah.
So let me suggest that you're absolutely right. That Deb is like absolutely precisely right. What is your objective? So decide, make Deb or Patty maybe write your objective. What are you trying to accomplish in this forum? And then who might you just have a potential list of people that you might want to include? And that would be the thing to present next week or next meeting, and a missions statement kind of here's what we want to do at this meeting, and here's some of the people we think might want to come.
I would just love to kind of tap into Abby's expertise on all of that, because I feel woefully lacking in that area. And Abby, you just have so much knowledge and experience, and I don't know, I just would love to tap into like what you would suggest or recommend.
I think we can have a discussion next time about, again, just different models for how we might pursue this. I'm happy to talk more. I think, when, especially if there's a lot of people there who might want to, hear. I mean, like I said, there's just, I think you hit the nail on the head. First, we have to figure out what is the topic, right? So again, I was referring back to some of our earlier conversations around implicit bias. Is it that? Is it around, what is, we have to cohere around a topic. And then from that, we can start thinking about speakers and who's the audience, and then we can think about the structure. Do we want different people on maybe a panel to present who represent different vantage points or different perspectives? Do we want those people to talk to each other in advance to have kind of a common theme that they're tackling? How much information do we want to give speakers about what we want them to talk about? What are the goals, of that? And again, thinking kind of further down the road, is this the first step in a series of things that we're planning? Do we want this to lead to continuing education for members of the community, city officials, law enforcement, whatever? So kind of thinking about the first step, and then the second step, and the third step, and the fourth step. But first we have to figure out, what is it? Is it, how to listen to each other? Is it about, collaborative problem solving across difference? It really could be as broad or as specific as we want. So I think this could be, I'm happy to kind of think about the different structures, but I think we have to kind of think about what is the topic before we can really get there.
So maybe that's what people can do, is to think about that between now and then. And if you have something, send it on to Patty and Deb.
That's what I was thinking. If we brainstormed, all of us, and we kind of, again, those of us who've been here from, early, to kind of really reflect back, to kind of get at what Kathy was saying, what are we here for? What are we doing? And kind of go back, at the same time being sensitive to the current moment and what is important to people. So it's really balancing the two of those things. What was our intended and stated mission early on, and what is it that our community needs right now? And balancing both of those things, maybe we'll kind of come up with some ideas that we can build off of and get some momentum going.
So I think what Mary Lou said is, much like when we were trying to build our mission, we sort of asked everyone to try and think about, before we actually sat down and did it, like think about, how you're, like how you would define or what you would see this as, and then we can hopefully bring that together. But I would say pretty strongly that people need to be pretty prepared that we can really, start getting at the heart of it, so that it's not like, oh, I didn't really get to it. That would be the thing I would appreciate. Sorry.
So I heard someone suggest that we send our brainstormed ideas on objectives, balancing our historical mission with the current needs of the community. Sending that to someone, who do we send it to? Or are we just going to collect it and go over it at the next meeting?
We can send it to each other, send it all around, but addressed to, I think, Pat and Deb. Yeah, why wouldn't we all?
You just can't discuss it, right, Deb?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
We can, people can send their ideas to everybody, we just can't have a discussion about it.
Right, you just don't talk about it, don't respond to it,
Okay.
You can put things like, we're creating a list, and you can put things on the list, but no discussion,
We can't say we like that, right?
Nope,
Okay.
nope,
Kills me. Okay,
All right,
That's deliberation, so you can't.
okay.
8:06.
We're just creating a list.
So don't take the lack of discussion personally. If no one likes your thing.
Right. Like,
Right. It's just
they don't
creating
like my idea. Yeah.
I think this is good news.
no response.
Mhm.
Awesome. All
Thank
right.
you. That makes me feel better that we have a plan. We have an action element here. That's good.
Okay.
Right.
Can we end? Can we end now?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Speaking for
I
Rebecca?
don't think we can even vote.
Oh, well,
We
yeah.
can't even vote, right? But anyway,
Every one of you gets a medal. Everyone.
No one's giving them out, that's for sure.
And I'd also like to thank the folks who sat through this and didn't get to, and weren't able to speak. We appreciate you being here and witnessing what we're trying.
Thank you, everyone.
You'll get your chance in 2 weeks. Now you don't have to wait a whole month, so.
There we go.
Right, and be first on the agenda, right?
Public speak.
Public speak will be first, yes?
Early on.
Yes.
No, actually, I think we have to approve minutes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, after approving minutes. Okay.
Yeah, we should probably approve all those minutes that we haven't.
Yep.
Holy cow. Okay. Maybe Rebecca could, our vice chair, could send out
Did.
or just send a link to where all the minutes are and remind us which minutes need to be approved. That
Or
would be,
resend. I think she sent some out earlier, but if you could resend them, Rebecca, all the ones we need to approve, that would be great.
okay, I'll do my best to highlight the ones to approve.
okay. Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Ew.
Have a good night.
You too. Good night.
Good night, everyone.